For 12 years, my daughter believed I had abandoned her. She believed I stopped calling, forgot her birthdays, and chose a new life without her. My sister was the one who comforted her through every disappointment. Then, while cleaning out our late father's attic, my daughter found a locked plastic box filled with every letter, birthday card, money order, and photograph I had sent, still sealed, still addressed to her, and all hidden by the woman she had trusted most. My name is Natalie Reed. I was 26 when my marriage ended and 38 when my daughter finally learned the truth. Her name is Sophie. She was 6 years old when her father, Mark, and I separated. The divorce was not dramatic from the outside. There were no police calls or broken windows. There were simply two exhausted people who had stopped trusting each other and a child too young to understand why her bedroom now existed in two houses. I worked as a surgical technician at a small hospital. Mark worked irregular construction jobs and had family nearby. During the divorce, I was offered a 6-month contract at a hospital 4 hours away. The pay was nearly double what I made at home, and it included temporary housing. Taking it meant I could pay off legal bills, save for an apartment near Sophie's school, and stabilize our lives. I did not want to leave her. My older sister, Rebecca, offered to help. Rebecca was 34 then, recently divorced, and living in our parents' large house. Sophie adored her. Rebecca baked elaborate birthday cakes, remembered every school theme day, and could turn an ordinary Saturday into an event. She said, "Go take the contract. Sophie can stay with me on your weekends. You can call every night. 6 months will pass quickly." Mark agreed because he trusted Rebecca more than he trusted me. We signed a temporary arrangement through our attorneys. Sophie would live primarily with Mark, spend some weekends with Rebecca, and visit me twice a month whenever my schedule allowed. For the first few weeks, everything worked. I called Sophie every evening at 7. We talked about school, her missing front tooth, and a class hamster named Peanut. I mailed her postcards from every small town I passed. I sent books, stickers, and a silver bracelet with a tiny star. Then the calls became harder. Sometimes Mark said Sophie was asleep. Sometimes Rebecca said she was at a friend's house. Other times the phone rang until voicemail. When I did speak to Sophie, she sounded distant. She began asking why I did not want to come home. I told her I was working, so we could have a home of our own. She replied, "Aunt Rebecca says people make time for what matters." I confronted Rebecca. She said Sophie had misunderstood an adult conversation. She accused me of being defensive because I felt guilty. I started writing longer letters. I wrote about my work, the apartment I planned to rent, and the room I wanted Sophie to decorate herself. I included stamped envelopes so she could write back. No replies came. I sent birthday cards, Christmas gifts, and money orders for school clothes. Rebecca always confirmed they arrived. She would text, "Sophie loved the present." Sometimes she sent a photograph of Sophie holding something I had mailed. Looking back, I realized the gifts were always unwrapped and the envelopes were never visible. 6 months became 10. The hospital offered me a permanent position with better benefits, but I turned it down. I returned home and rented a small apartment near Sophie's school. By then, Mark had filed to change the custody arrangement. His petition said I had maintained inconsistent contact, missed scheduled visits, and failed to contribute reliably. I brought my phone records and postal receipts to court, but most of my calls had been made to Rebecca's house or Mark's number and were either unanswered or short. The judge did not say I was a bad mother, but he said Sophie needed stability. I received alternating weekends, and one evening each week. Sophie did not want to come. She was 7 by then, and angry in the quiet way children become angry when adults have supplied them with an explanation. She asked why I never wrote. I told her I had written every week. She said, "Aunt Rebecca said you only sent things when Grandma reminded you." I showed her copies of 2 letters saved on my computer. She looked confused and then frightened, as if believing me would mean betraying the people she lived with. At the next handoff, Rebecca accused me of upsetting her. She said, "Stop forcing adult guilt onto a child." I asked what she had done with my letters. She looked directly at me and said, "I gave Sophie everything you sent." I believed there had been misunderstandings, lost mail, Mark forgetting to pass things along, Sophie protecting herself from disappointment. I did not yet believe my sister could build a 12-year lie. Over the next few years, my relationship with Sophie became a series of small recoveries followed by sudden retreats. At my apartment, we cooked pancakes and watched old movies. She laughed, relaxed, and sometimes fell asleep beside me on the sofa. Then she returned to Mark and Rebecca and stopped answering messages again. Rebecca became the central woman in her life. She attended teacher meetings when Mark worked. She helped with dance costumes, school applications, and birthday parties. She introduced Sophie as basically my daughter. At family gatherings, people praised Rebecca for stepping in when I had left. I corrected them at first. Eventually, I stopped. Every defense made me sound more guilty. Every argument ended with someone saying, "The important thing is that Sophie is happy." But Sophie was not happy. By 13, she was anxious, guarded, and terrified that people would leave without warning. She once told me she never depended on anyone because her own mother had taught her not to. I cried in my car after she said it. I kept writing letters, even though she lived only 20 minutes away. I wrote them because texts could be ignored and calls could be blocked. Letters gave me a way to say everything without turning our visits into arguments. I mailed them to Mark's house, Rebecca's house, and later to our parents' address when Sophie spent summers there. I included copies in a folder of my own. At 16, Sophie stopped visiting completely. She sent me a message that said, "Please stop pretending we have a relationship. Aunt Rebecca was the one who raised me." I replied that I loved her and would be available whenever she was ready. For 2 years, we barely spoke. Then our father died. Dad had been the quietest person in the family. He disliked conflict and usually escaped to his workshop whenever arguments started. After his funeral, Rebecca said she could not handle sorting the house, so Sophie volunteered to help our mother. I stayed away from the attic because it contained Dad's tools, jackets, and boxes of photographs I was not ready to see. 3 weeks later, Sophie called me. I almost did not recognize her number because she had not called in so long. She said, "I found something." Her voice sounded strange, not angry, not warm, unsteady. She asked me to come to Grandma's house. When I arrived, Sophie was sitting on the living room floor beside a gray plastic storage box. Our mother sat on the sofa crying. Rebecca was not there. The box had a small brass padlock that Sophie had cut with Dad's bolt cutters. Inside were hundreds of envelopes. My handwriting covered all of them. Some were addressed to Sophie at 6 years old, others at 8, 10, 13, and 16. There were birthday cards, Christmas cards, postcards, photographs, and letters thick enough to contain several pages. Most were unopened. A few had been opened carefully and resealed. At the bottom were money orders and gift cards I believed Sophie had received. Some had expired, others had been cashed. There was also a notebook in Rebecca's handwriting. It contained dates, amounts, and short comments. Birthday card, do not give. Called twice, told her Sophie was sleeping. Silver bracelet, use as gift from family. College letter, keep until decision. Sophie picked up the bracelet she had worn for years. Rebecca had told her it was from our father. I said, "I sent that to you when you lost your first tooth." Sophie began crying. She asked why Rebecca would do it. I did not know. Our mother finally admitted she had suspected something. Years earlier, she saw a stack of my letters in Rebecca's closet. Rebecca claimed she was saving them until Sophie was emotionally ready. Mom accepted that explanation because Rebecca said giving them to Sophie would create confusion during the custody case. Mom had found the locked box after Dad died and moved it to the attic, but she had been afraid to confront Rebecca without proof of what was inside. Sophie looked at her grandmother and said, "You let me believe she didn't want me." Mom covered her face. There was no defense. We called Rebecca. She arrived 20 minutes later and froze when she saw the box. At first, she said she had been protecting Sophie. She claimed my letters were manipulative and would have disrupted the stable home she had helped create. Sophie held up a birthday card. I was 8. She wrote that she missed me and hoped I liked science camp. What was dangerous about that? Rebecca said I was inconsistent. I showed her the postal receipts, call logs, court documents, and copies I had kept. Then Sophie found the money orders. Several had been deposited into an account Rebecca controlled. The total was more than $11,000. Rebecca stopped calling it protection. She said she had spent money on Sophie and considered the deposits reimbursement. I asked why she had hidden the letters. She said, because every time Natalie came back, Sophie started loving her again. The room went silent. There it was. Not concern. Not stability. Jealousy. Rebecca had built her identity around being the woman who stayed. My presence threatened the role she had created for herself. So she made sure every missed call looked intentional, every hidden letter looked like silence, and every gift became proof of her own devotion. Sophie stood up. You did not raise me because she left. You made me believe she left so you could raise me. Rebecca started crying and said she loved her. Sophie replied, you loved being needed. That was the last thing she said before leaving the room. The discovery did not repair 12 years in one afternoon. Truth is not a switch that restores everything once it is turned on. Sophie read the letters slowly over several months. Some made her laugh. Others made her angry because they described school events I had attended from the back row after being told she did not want me there. She learned I had kept every copy. She learned I had opened a college account in her name and continued contributing even after she stopped speaking to me. She learned I had never moved away with a new family, as Rebecca had once implied. I had lived 20 minutes away, waiting for visits Sophie believed I did not want. Rebecca was removed from our mother's financial accounts. She repaid the money in monthly installments after an attorney reviewed the deposits. Sophie chose not to pursue criminal charges, but she ended contact with Rebecca for more than a year. Our mother apologized to both of us. I accepted her apology eventually, but I told her silence had not kept the family together. It had protected the person causing harm. Sophie and I began again carefully. We did not pretend I had raised her through every stage. Rebecca had attended important moments. Mark had provided a home. Nothing about the truth required erasing reality. But Sophie finally understood that my absence had not been a choice. On her 19th birthday, she came to my apartment carrying the gray storage box. She had opened every letter. Inside the box, she placed a new envelope addressed to me. The letter said, I cannot give us 12 years back, but I do not want to lose the years ahead. I still keep it in my bedside drawer. For 12 years, my daughter believed I had abandoned her. My sister became the hero of that story by hiding every piece of evidence that proved otherwise. She hid the letters. She hid the calls. She hid the money. But she could not keep the truth hidden forever. What would you have done after finding that box? Cut the sister off permanently, or allow her one chance to explain? Tell me in the comments, and subscribe for more original stories from Real Stories of Women.